Hey guys, and welcome to Crush Your Convo. We are crushing the conversation one episode at a time. Today is a special bonus episode as I sit down with Kitty Swink and Armin Shimerman to talk about this year's PurpleStride, the fight against pancreatic cancer. It is an honor to have you both joining me today.
Thank you. We're very happy to be here.
So excited. I've only been a fan of Star Trek for the last 3 years. And so I'm very new. I'm a baby. But I really fell in love of the message that Trek represents. And one of the things that I learned, like we were just talking behind the scenes, is how, we were talking about Trek Talks and, the Pablo Foundation. And that really represents of what the fans and the franchise is. And so I've just been really into it. I saw Next Generation, went to Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and I'm working my way through, almost done with Enterprise, almost there. But it's been a lot of fun. And so it's been a pleasure to also meet you guys and have these conversations. So, I want to go ahead. Thank you. I wanted to go ahead and jump in though. So just let the listeners know about PurpleStride and the event happening on April 26th.
Kitty, take it away. She's our team captain.
All right, go for it.
So just an introduction to why Trek became part of the pancreatic cancer world is I'm a 21-year survivor, and during the pandemic, Pam Marquardt, who created Pancan, who was the founder of Pancan, emailed me one day and said, would you consider being an ambassador for us? I had spent some time working with Charlotte Ray, going to Pancan things, Charlotte, who maybe people know from
Facts of Life.
Facts of Life and lots of other shows. And she was a Broadway diva. It was like my emotional grandmother, and she also was a pancreatic cancer survivor. So I spoke at her funeral, and that keyed Pam into talking to me. And I said, well, I would be happy to do that, but I think I have a better idea. I think Star Trek is a place to go, and I will ask my husband, Armin, who got me through pancreatic cancer, and our friend Jonathan Frakes, whose brother Daniel died before I got sick. And so we went to Marina Sirtis's going away party, and we asked Jonathan, and he said, absolutely. And a couple of years later, we asked John Billingsley when we heard about his mother having passed from pancreatic cancer. And then last year, we were lucky enough to have Juan Carlos Cotto, Manny's brother, join us. And it's great because nothing about Star Trek is true if the fact that they aren't helpful, if they don't believe in science, if they don't believe in surrounding people with the kind of care and attention they need, is true. And all of that is true. So the pancreatic cancer community and the Star Trek community have formed a real alliance, and the fans have been wonderful, as have the actors and the producers and the writers in supporting this cause.
And if I may, since our good friend Jonathan Frakes isn't here, this is something he would say. He always says, Star Trek is about hope, and Kitty presents an example of hope. As Kitty told you, he lost his brother, and Kitty has survived. Many people think that when they're diagnosed with this particular cancer, that it's a death sentence and that there's no way out. Kitty's life indicates that that's not so. But more importantly, the reason we support this organization is that it is doing everything it can, and it raises millions of dollars to get a cure for this, to get markers so that people get diagnosed early on, to reach out to people like myself who were caregivers. We weren't stricken with the disease, but our family were, our friends were, and it helps all of us get through it. And again, it's all about hope, and we believe that Star Trek is all about hope as well.
And
I agree.
thank you. And then the other thing I would say is the event is the 26th of April, happens in 60 cities around the country. And if you're going to be in the LA area, we'd love to have you come walk with us. It's a big party. It's a hopeful party. You think, oh, people talking about dying of pancreatic cancer. Well, no, we're talking about surviving pancreatic cancer and giving other people hope. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful, happy, inspiring, funny, beautiful occasion. And walking on the Santa Monica Beach is not so bad. That's pretty good too.
And as Kitty said, there are 59 other cities that have these marches as well. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of people marching in each of these cities. If you live near a city, if you don't know whether there's a march near your city or town, go to Pancan, www.pancan.org. And on their website, they will list the 60 cities, what time it starts, where you go. It will provide everything to you. And as Kitty said, it's a great big party. It's not depressing at all. It's joyous. I've had the good fortune not only to march in Los Angeles, but also in Kansas City. And both events were just very, very happy events.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, this QR code that I created, this actually takes you guys directly to your portion of the website, the Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer, your team. So if you would like to donate, they can just scan that QR code. But Armin, I'm very glad that you mentioned about you being a caregiver, because, and this isn't really necessarily a question, but like my mom was diagnosed with a horrible disease. She has pulmonary hypertension, and she's had it for decades, but she's been on oxygen. We've had very close calls, and I was her caregiver for a very long time. And one of the things is that when you're, diagnosed with something, whether it's cancer or any kind of disease, it not only affects the person, but it affects the people around them, especially those who are taking care of them. And caregivers, I feel like, are like the behind the scenes kind of, silent partner in all of this, because you are going with them side by side on their journey as they fight through whatever they're going through. And so sometimes people kind of forget that they're not going by themselves. There's always someone else that's also being affected. And then also it affects you in a way as a caregiver. I don't know if I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself that it's very like, helpless, right? Because you're seeing someone you love. Like I love my mom and I helped take care of her, but when she was having her really bad days, I couldn't do anything about it,
But you could hold her hand. You could make her feel better. Your presence there made her better, made her hopeful, knew that she wasn't alone. It's not that you didn't do anything. You did a lot. You just didn't know it.
Thank you.
I often say, I'm sorry, I'm playing with my computer. I often say, well, our friend Larry Pressman, who a lot of you will know from Star Trek, he did, how many episodes did he do of DS9, Armin? A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Larry, Larry's wife was a long suffering patient with MS. She probably 35, 40 years. And 35 anyway. And she was extraordinary. And Larry took really good care of her. So when the rest of the world was offering to help me, Larry made a point to help Armin. And I have loved him ever since for that. It was extraordinary. And PanCan doesn't just offer help to doctors to learn how to diagnose. They don't just fund science projects, research projects into cures and all of those things, but they also have a family and patient services arm that will help not just the patient, but the caregivers. They'll help the caregivers, and that's really wonderful.
One of the things that PanCan will do, if anyone, God forbid, is diagnosed with this disease, one of the first things they should do after having a large drink somewhere, is to contact PanCan and ask for advice, not only about what they should do, but also to get a second opinion. Doctors, oncologists are very knowledgeable people, but a lot of doctors aren't really familiar with pancreatic cancer, even though it's probably the third or second most lethal cancer you can get. But most doctors aren't as familiar. The PanCan people will send you an advocate, someone to sit with you when you speak to your doctors, and I recommend this highly. And they will recommend second diagnosis, so you can go to your primary care physician, you can go to whoever they've recommended, but you should get a second opinion, and PanCan can direct you where the very best pancreatic cancer oncologists are. Furthermore, if I may, one of the great things about this organization is, yes, we're looking for cures and markers for pancreatic cancer, but we all know this. Any research that helps cure one particular cancer goes very far in helping to cure other cancers. They're all different, but one can help the other. So contributing to pancreatic cancer, in a sense, you're contributing to all cancers.
Yep.
That's great. So now, what is one of the biggest things that you hope to accomplish this season of PurpleStride after losing the federal funding?
Yeah, that's a huge loss. That's an enormous
Right.
loss. And it's not just for pancreatic cancer, it's also for all cancers. It's a loss to science, actually.
Exactly.
What do we hope to do? We hope to do what we're doing today. Educate people about the loss of that funding, educate people into where they can go if they're touched by this disease, to reach out and inform people about this. Because if you are in ignorance about this, should it touch you, you're probably devastated. We're offering hope. That's what we're doing here. We're offering hope.
But we're also, the more money we can raise, the more money we can resupply research institutes with. I mean, we can't make up for what the federal government took away. They took away 57% of the funding in the House and Senate in their budget. And in the Defense Department, they had a huge pancreatic cancer program, and it was really on the cutting edge. It was doing very exciting research, and that was entirely cut out of the Defense Department's budget. So between those two things, we have been set back on our heels. There's exciting work being done with mRNA vaccines with pancreatic cancer that can actually cure people of one particular strain of pancreatic cancer. About 10% of the patients have this strain. But that money that was going to fund that kind of research is gone. So now we have to make up for it as best we can.
So we're asking the public sector to replace, or the private sector to replace the government sector.
Yeah, that's it. I remember when they had talked about cutting the funding and stuff like that. I was like, this is such a setback to so many. Like there was, we were making so much stride towards, research. And now all of a sudden it was like 10 steps forward. And now we are like 100 steps back, right? Because now it's like almost like starting over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it's so important to try and get this going. And this was one of the biggest reasons, like I had said, that, I'm new to the franchise. I just started watching Star Trek. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was just how much this community of Star Trek just represents that hope you guys have been talking about in a better future. And we need that better future. We need that research to get there, right? So
it would be lovely if the doctors today had tricorders and they could just wave it over you and your disease would be gone. We're hoping
be so
that's
easy, right?
what we strive for. But right now, that's still very much in the future.
Well, one little thing in the neck and you're good to go, right? Now, what does it mean to you, though, on how the Trek community has come together to help raise money for this organization or any organization that you are close to?
Well, it means a lot to us. We are constantly thanking people who've been kind enough to listen, to those even kinder people who've made donations. We are in awe of the generosity of the Star Trek community. It not only helps with our particular charity, but with so many others. You mentioned Mr. Stanwich.
Dashwick.
Dashwick.
Sorry.
Smile from here. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, I'll call him and apologize in a moment. But there's so many charities that people have contributed to because they know that it is a community. And that it takes a village, and this is a rather large village, and the village is very eager to help each other out. And we are enormously grateful and blessed to have that village.
And the thing is Star Trek fans don't just support Star Trek actors; they also support each other, and that is really miraculous. It's fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've learned to be a better person just because of Star Trek, which, I've told that to people. I don't think, I mean, I used to have a very narrow-minded, to be frank, very bigoted mindset 10, 15 years ago, just because I didn't understand just how it was. And as I kind of came in, and I actually suffered a trauma like a year after I started watching Star Trek and started meeting people. And I feel like if I didn't have Star Trek or the people around me, the people that I met, I don't know how I would have gotten through the PTSD and all that stuff after the fact, because of what I did learn. And so I actually am wearing a design that I made for Trek Talks. It's called Be Kind Like Crusher. And it's just, that's one of the biggest things is kindness, being there for each other, and that's what I feel like is so amazing of what Star Trek is. And I feel like you, Kitty, especially are representing that, and also the people around you of just, having a voice and bringing light to something that I don't think people know too much about. Now, another disease that affected me is Alzheimer's.
Me too.
My grandma had passed away from it, and it is a horrific disease. My uncle ended up getting frontal lobe dementia, and he passed away at 68. And it's the same one that Bruce Willis has. And so, it's one of those things where, like, unless you've actually been in the trenches of it, you never really understand exactly what it is. And so that's why, like, stuff like this, is so important to bring to light. Is there anything else with PurpleStride or thing that you guys want to mention before I jump into the fun Star Trek questions with you guys?
Hey, you can't donate. We understand. But please share it on your social media. Please go to www.purplestride.com/Team Trek and share what we have out there. Look for Armin or John or me or Jonathan Frakes or JC Cocteau, and share what we've put out and what Pancan's put out, because awareness is so important. And if you can't give, you can give in other ways, and that's one of the ways you can give.
If you can tell someone who's stricken with this disease or someone who knows someone, if you can tell them about Pancan and what they do, that's as good as a donation. That's better than a donation.
Yeah. Actually, I was very curious. Does Pancan have like a thing where, for instance, like support groups and stuff? If like you have just been diagnosed and stuff, there's support groups.
That's what we've been talking about. It has lots of support groups. It's there to not only get, to find cures and scientific explorations and clinical studies. It does tons of things. You'd be surprised the thousands of things that Pancan does. But it's also there to hold your hand, to give you support, to talk you through it, to say it's not a dead end. There are ways out of this. Let's look for them. Let's send you to the right places so that you get the best possible medical advice. They can do that. They want to do that. And it's all free, by the way. If you call them up and ask them for advice that I was just talking about, it is all free. Listen to the Ferengi. It is absolutely free. It's a great deal.
Great deal. Yes.
Yeah. But you can get hooked up to support groups. It's all great. It's really helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So perfect segue though for that Ferengi. So with my Star Trek questions, I just had a couple of fun questions with you guys. First off, I'm just curious of what got you both into acting, and were you Star Trek fans before getting into the franchise?
What got me into acting? girls got me into acting. There were a lot of girls in the drama department when I was in high school, and I had just moved to
Yep.
that high school. So it was a great way of not only meeting females, but also of meeting friends, because I had emigrated from New Jersey to Los Angeles and didn't know anybody. So acting was that. Also, I found it was a great pleasure, a turn on to become somebody else on stage. I really loved that experience, and was allowed to be things that I normally wouldn't be allowed to be. I was allowed to be heroes. I was allowed to be villains. I was allowed to be mystics. I was allowed to be classical characters. I was allowed to speak in a language that wasn't mine. All of that was thrilling to me, and the gods have been kind, and they gave me a career in it as well. And yes, I was a Star Trek fan long before my journey on Deep Space Nine or Next Generation. And in fact, and during the first 6 months of Deep Space Nine, the other actors would come to me and ask me questions because they knew I had the answers about Star Trek. I remember somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody came up to me and said, "Armin, you know this stuff. What's a Klingon?" And so I'd have to explain that to them.
That was before Dory joined the show.
That was before mine.
Yeah. Yes, I was a Star Trek fan because my oldest brother, whose birthday it is today, was going to be a scientist. Obviously, you could tell he was going to be a scientist from when we were kids, but he became a rocket scientist because of Star Trek. So he had my brother Steve and I lined up, and the three of us would be on our stomachs, like this. There's a picture that JC puts up of Manny watching Star Trek like this.
I've seen it. So cool.
And you could have the same picture of Don and Steve and I. So yeah, and I was always interested, and I was doing plays in school, but in junior high school, Patty DeRoche turned to me and said, "What do you want to be when we grow up?" And I said, "An actor," and she laughed at me. So that was it. That was it. I was in. It was over.
It's over. Now, Armin, you had mentioned that not only were you in DS9, but you were also in the Next Generation because you played two different Ferengis on the Next Generation before you were the famous bartender Quark. But why was it so important to you to right the wrong of the Ferengi?
It wasn't so much to right the wrong of the Ferengi. It was to right the wrong that I had committed playing a Ferengi. That first performance, that first time that we meet the Ferengi, yes, the last outpost. It was an abysmal performance. It was all wrong. Understand, when I came to work the first day, they said, "Okay, the Ferengi are going to be the new Klingons for Next Generation," and they were supposed to be very serious opponents to Starfleet. And I made a botch of it altogether, and it was just wrong. It was just wrong. Granted, the makeup didn't help, the blue whips didn't help, the costumes didn't help. But I put most of the blame on myself. There were four of us playing Ferengi, but I had the most lines, and it was wrong. It was wrong, and I've borne that burden, that onus, for so many years. And when I was cast on Deep Space Nine, it was my primary objective to try to take these one-dimensional characters that nobody liked, and I didn't blame them, and turn them into three-dimensional characters, and to make them, believe it or not, as human as possible.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Without, I will debate it with anyone. The Ferengi are the most human characters on Star Trek, more human than the Starfleet people.
Because I could see that.
They're all heroes. It's a suicide mission. Yes, I'll volunteer. Come on. That's not real.
That is very, very true. Now, Kitty, you played two different characters on Deep Space Nine. Is there any character you would have loved to play in Star Trek besides those two aliens? I believe you were Bajoran in one of them, and then I can't remember the other alien that was the way you. Yes.
Yeah, and I did a game where I played a bunch of different kinds of aliens. Well, secretly everybody wants to be Alice Krige in First Contact. I think
Yeah.
that was one of the great characters of all time. And for the same reason I prefer the Vorta character to the Bajoran, I like to play the bad guys. It's more fun. It's just more fun.
Yeah.
Kitty, tell Jesse the advice you got from Jeff Combs.
Right. So the day I went in to read for the Vorta character, we ran into Jeff, and I said, Jeff, do you have any advice before I audition? He said, yeah, two things: be obsequious and evil, and do this with your eyes all the time. So I kept flaring my eyes, and I got the job. So there you go. That's what I did.
All right.
Yeah.
He knew what he was.
And Kitty was the first. How do I put this? Spouse. I guess that's the best way to put it, or significant other, to break what I call the spouse barrier. No spouse or significant other to one of the leading characters on the show had ever appeared on a show before. Kitty was the first person to do that, and ironically, though she appeared twice on Deep Space Nine, she never had a scene with Quark.
No.
Did you wish you guys had a scene, or do you like
No,
separate it?
never wrote about. I'm quite sure they knew who Kitty was. That we're quite sure of.
Of course they did.
But I think what happened was the casting is the last part of the process. So they'd already written the material, and they couldn't necessarily create a scene just to have the two of us together.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But they did have a scene. No, they didn't. I was about to say something that's not true, so I won't say it.
But Walter's son was in that episode too. Walter Koenig's son.
Walter Koenig's son, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
Not a spouse.
Now, I know John Delancey had his son in an episode of Voyager. Yeah.
And he had to audition. Keegan had to audition.
Wait, yes. Well, so did I.
Yeah, but Keegan is playing John's son. You know, he's already got that part from birth.
Right. And Marnie actually did an episode of Next Gen, but he wasn't a series regular. He was just a very recurring, prominent character. But his wife Marnie was in an episode of Next Gen.
Marnie, awesome. It really was a family affair in some sense, right? I always feel like
we are family. I mean, John and I were texting back and forth last night about a reading we're doing of a new play by Judith Aubergenois, who was the widow of Renee. We are, Marnie and I take hikes together. Liz Berman and I all of us are family. We are, some of our dearest friends are. Terry Farrell stays in our guest house when she's in town. I mean, it's the whole thing. Yeah.
Nice. Now, Armin, I know you returned as Quark in Lower Decks, which was fabulous, but would you both love to come back in the like a live action Star Trek show or even a movie?
Of course. The answer is yes, of course. Unfortunately for me, Patrick told me for years that he'd love to have me on Picard, but that never happened.
Oh, no.
But of course, absolutely. And both Nana and I were flattered when we were asked to do Lower Decks, because the truth of the matter is Deep Space Nine has always been relegated to the back of the room when it comes to Star Trek shows. And for this new show, Lower Decks, it was new at the time, to say, no, this is a place we want to visit. We want to revisit some of the characters from that show, a show that we felt had been overlooked for years. We were very flattered by that and would happily go back and do it again. And then they went on a couple of episodes later to do an episode surrounding Rom and Lita, which was terrific too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I loved that. Actually, it was kind of funny. My husband's favorite show, he's the one that got me into Star Trek. Yeah. He loved The Next Generation. That was his favorite show, but he never watched the other Star Trek shows. And so when I started watching it, he's like, all right, I'll give these other ones a chance. Loved DS9. He binged that so quickly. And you were actually his favorite character. He just loved there was that comedic part of Quark, but that seriousness, because Quark would be very try to act selfish, but in the end, he was like secretly like helping his brother, right? Like you were saying, they're more human than the actual
Three-dimensional.
Starfleet.
That was my agenda, to make it three-dimensional. And I must say, your husband has
Nice.
good taste. He married you, and he likes me. Good taste. Good taste.
Perfect all around, right? Now, was there anything in your line of work that you did that you were extremely proud of or wished you got to do more of, except for Principal Snyder? I was very happy to see him go in Buffy. But was there any other work that you guys did that you were like, man, I wish I could do another episode of this character or something?
Well, ironically, yes, of course, we always want to do more episodes of the characters we've established. The great pity of being a guest star for all the actors who are guest stars in all the shows around the world is that you get to do it once, and you've created a character, and you're working with people who've been doing their characters for a long period of time. They're very comfortable in their characters, and you've just stuck your toe into that character and hoping that it's good. And so you want to go back and revisit those characters that you've created. I certainly would love to have done that a number of times. I was blessed with a number of recurring parts over the course of my career, and certainly learned from all of them. But you asked me what I would really like to do. Um, Years ago, before I was a TV actor, I was a Broadway actor, and I gave that all up to come west and be in television. And my secret desire is to go back and do another Broadway show sometime before I get too old to memorize lines.
You have all your lines for the show we started rehearsal this week for, which I can't say I am as far along as he is. I was doing 12th Night, so once he finished directing 12th Night and I was still doing the show, while I'd go off to the theater, he was learning his lines for Outside Mullingar. So there you go.
Oh, wow. I can't remember anything. I'll walk into the kitchen. I'm like, why did I come here?
Oh, yeah.
That's just the nature of things.
That's just how it is. Did you have anything, Kitty, that you wish you could go back to?
Yeah. There were three shows in my life one show where the day they offered me a series deal was the day the show got canceled, that I loved many, many, many years ago. That was David Chase's first series, the guy who created The Sopranos. It was called Almost Grown. And I played somebody who then later, from the first day we worked together, when I guested on the show, Eve Gordon was the leading lady in the series. And she and I have stayed friends all of these more than 30 years. So I would have loved to have gotten to do more of that, because David Chase rings so hugely in my imagination as a great television creator. And a couple of shows where I did an episode made so you're going to become a recurring character, and then one show got canceled immediately, and the other show decided that they did. I played a character who had cancer and had survived, and was sort of a mentor to one of the series regulars. And I wish that had gone, because it's something I feel so passionate about. And they weren't coy about it, and they weren't maudlin about it. It just was what it was. And so that was something I would have liked to have done more. But I just like to go to work. I like to meet people. I like to go to work.
And if I may, I gave you one answer for your question. Is there anything? And I said Broadway shows. But there is one particular TV part that I only got to do once. And I really loved doing it. It's just great. It was a show called Timeless. Is that the one you were thinking of, Kitty?
Yeah.
If you get a chance ever to see the reruns of Timeless, look for, it was called The Revenge. I think something to do with Benedict Arnold is in the title. And I played a character I don't think anyone would recognize me in. I was wearing no makeup, so that's out. But it was just one of the best performances I ever gave. And I would love to go back and step into those shoes. But that show is over.
And he was truly evil in a way that you can't believe Armin Shimerman could be evil. He's terrifying.
Oh, gosh.
Charming and evil. But it was a brilliant
worst combination.
It was a brilliantly written character. And the nature of this show was that you went to different time periods every week. So although this guy was probably responsible for why they were going to different time periods every week.
This sounds familiar now that you said that. I'm all like, that sounds actually really. Was it in the 90s or like early?
The show was shot after the 90s I would say 2015. I can't remember when.
Oh, okay.
2000 something. But it just really good writing. And again, you asked if I personally liked the character.
Yeah.
That's the character I would like to revisit.
Nice. Now, this is more of I have a couple questions left, but this is more of a sappy question. But I always like to, I always love to hear the wisdom from couples who have been together for a long time. And you guys have been married for almost 44 years. Is that right?
Next month.
Okay. Next month. All right. So
a month from today.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so now I have that in my mind. So what is that you believe is the single most important thing in a lasting relationship?
Compromise.
Laughter.
Laughter? Is that, yeah.
My mother very wisely said, don't, pointed to Armin, she picked Armin. She said, oh, don't worry about that guy. Worry about that guy. But she said, don't worry about the ones who try and seduce you. Worry about the ones who laugh you into bed. And she was right. She was right. I never, even when we're not having a happy moment together, I never forget what a wonderful sense of humor and joyful human being he is.
Oh, she forgets sometimes. I just make her forget. That's all. She doesn't always forget.
With my husband and
that's the compromise. That's the compromise.
Right, there you go. Yes. My husband and I, we will be married 9 years on Star Trek Day, which was just a happy coincidence. We didn't know it was Star Trek Day. But I've known him for almost 22 years. So we were friends for a long time since college. And then that, all of a sudden sparked a relationship later on. So, but I always like to hear, words of wisdom, words of advice, right?
Any for your thoughts?
So this one, where is it? This one is from Ed.
Hi, this is Ed Pogue, My Fair Universe on Instagram. And I want to take this moment to say not only thank you to you both for everything you do with the trek against pancreatic cancer, but I want to take a moment to say to Mr. Shimerman, thank you for your role not only in Star Trek, but for one of my all-time favorite shows, The Invisible Man. You guest starred in one episode in season 2, and I absolutely loved that performance. It was one of the highlights for me as a fan of that show. And I wanted to just take a moment to say thank you. And thank you both for all that you do.
Thank you, Ed.
Not really a question, but a thank you. So can you talk a little bit about you doing The Invisible Man?
Sure. I think Ed said, I'm not quite sure, but I think Ed said I was only in one episode. I believe I was in 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That was an interesting experience because I had already done Star Trek when I was doing The Invisible Man. Now on Star Trek, policy was the actors had to say every word that was on the page and could never deviate one syllable from what was written on the page. Now we could make sounds or have choices about how we said the words, but the words had to be dead letter perfect. We were shooting a scene in The Invisible Man. I was sitting there, and one of the 2 actors, forgive me, I just saw his picture and I've forgotten his name, went off on a tear, just started ad-libbing about stuff. And had like a 6-minute monologue about cannoli, as I remember. And the director finally stopped him and said, well, whose line is it? And I said, or whose cue is that? And I said, it's mine, but my line has nothing to do with cannoli. I can't begin to say the line connected to what he just said. But what was interesting was I found out later that they did this on a regular basis, that the actors just created their own dialogue, which 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 was not allowed on any of the Star Trek shows that
Right.
not on
Unheard of.
Pancreatic,
Yeah.
not on any of the shows I've ever done,
Right.
except that one. And and that was a rather new and terrifying experience.
Oh, I could only imagine, because you're just not sure, like, am I allowed to say this? I don't know.
That's right. Again, when you're the series regular, you have a lot of leeway. When you're a guest star, you're just a guest, and you have to abide by the rules of the host. But it was lovely, and we shot that in San Diego, which is 100 miles from where I live, and it was a lovely time. And unfortunately, as you can see by the picture, I had a lot of stuff that I had to wear. Nothing compared to Quark's makeup, but still, not only did you notice the white makeup that they plastered all over me,
Yeah.
but I also had the character was blind, so they gave me sclerals that covered up most of my eye. There was a little pinpoint where I could see, but the moment I stepped into any light, if I walked outside off of the soundstage, blinding light, I could not keep my eyes open because of the sclerals.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of interesting experience as well.
Wow. So this next one is actually from Tim from FSF Popcast.
Hi, Kitty. Hi, Armin. Hey, it's Tim from the FSF Popcast. So with the removal of federal funding this year for pancreatic cancer research, what are some ways that we can help signal boost the need for pancreatic cancer awareness, the need for donations, and even what those donations go for as far as programs and cancer research and helping those who are already in the middle of their fight? So just thinking about that, and thought maybe you guys would have some good clues on that. Anyway, thank you for being such amazing Trek ambassadors. Thank you for doing all the wonderful things that you guys do, and hope you guys have just an amazing PurpleStride. Oh, hey, and Armin, how long does it take you to get your Quark makeup? Okay, bye.
He told me that last one was a joke, because I guess that's the
It
most.
is a joke. I understand where he's coming from. That's the question I get asked ad infinitum. And sometimes when I go to conventions, I don't even introduce myself. I just go up to the microphone and go, 2 hours, 2 hours.
2 hours.
So I knew where Tim was coming from. And I believe we've answered most of Tim's questions already.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Tim is one of the great ambassadors for the idea of getting out the word. He is incredible.
Sure.
FSF has been extraordinary in helping us, and they repost everything PanCan puts out. They boost our signal all the time, and they raise money, and they walk, and they're extraordinary.
Yeah,
I love them.
And everybody else, Tim's a great help, a great help.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really good friends of mine, and we have, like, they've been on my show, I've been on theirs. They actually just on their live a couple of days ago. He was blasting all about Pancan, and he was all like, scan this code, we're doing this, like, he understands the assignment. But yeah, I thought at the very end, that's why I did that picture of you holding a picture of Quark was a good one. Takes 2 hours. I should have just put that at the very end.
If I may just add something that just to educate people a little. People, of course, know me from Star Trek and from Buffy and from a couple other shows. It's interesting to note, and it's true of all the actors I know, many people aren't aware of how much other work people do. In other words, I have done over 80 different programs. So Buffy and Star Trek are just 1, 2. That's all. There's still another 78, including this one, The Invisible Man. We, like many guest stars, we appear and we learn our craft, and we work hard at it, and hopefully we get to move from one step to another. And people always think that, oh, I know him from Star Trek, I know him from Buffy, but they don't realize I have a career. Kitty has a career. All of us have careers, and we didn't just suddenly appear. We've been there all along. You just never noticed us before.
Yeah.
one of the shows that I actually know you from was Charmed.
Charmed,
Where you played,
my least
yep.
favorite show, but thank you.
You played a bad guy, so
I played a bad guy, and I won't go into what I feel
no,
about.
it's okay. I've heard some stories. You're fine. But that was actually one of the things when I had Gates on last year. You know, we were talking about her podcast. We talked a little bit about Star Trek, obviously, but I went into straight to her voice work because I was all like, "You're an X-Men!" Like, so excited. I was like, I really want to talk about X-Men because you guys do you're not just in a box. You know, yes, you guys are known for these characters, but you know, you have been outside of that. When I did have the conversation with John and her name's escaping me, Chakowski, Stephanie. She they both were on Bones, and I'm a huge Bones fan. And so I talked about their work on Bones, if those they had great stories and stuff, because I'm all like, you guys have done a lot of work. You guys have played different characters. And one of the things that I like to do is, you know, crush the conversation, right? You know, talk about different things and have those intimate conversations of just about like who you are outside of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, also, in Gates' case, like me, she was an artistic director of the theater for a long time. So that's a 65, 70 hour a week job.
Yeah.
Yes, she gave time and money and energy for many years to being an artistic director after Star Trek was over. And it wasn't over for her, but it was over for her, for TNG anyway.
Right.
Incredible work that she did over there.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know she gets a lot of questions, I think, about David Bowie, you know, or like Kermit the Frog, you know, or something like that. But again, there's other work that she has done outside of it. So,
and everyone knows, of course, that she's an incredible dancer, right?
Yes, the dancing doctor is like I like to call her. But that's actually it, guys. So just remind everyone about PanCan, where they can donate April 26th. Of course, where's the code? There it is. Scan that QR code
before April the 26th. The titular deadline is the 26th because that's when the marches are. But you can donate after the 26th. PanCan will take your money on June the 1st, July the 1st, whatever.
Payday. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can start actually donating today. And right now, don't know whether it will still be happening. It won't be when the podcast arrives, but there is at this date, any contribution made.
They already hit their match.
Somebody
had 3 match. One was an anonymous $1 million match. People could donate up to $2,500, and the match would match that for everybody who donated up to that. And then today we had a $100,000 match from the foundation, and you could donate up to $250 and have it be $500 in your account, which was amazing. But apparently that went like that. People, I saw a thing on social media that it had already been met.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's always great to hear. I mean, I had heard about the $1 million, and it's like, wow. I mean, people, especially because knowing that the federal funding is gone, it's like now more than ever, donate, do something, whatever you can. And I know, like John even said during Trek Talks, and Bonnie was like, even if you donate $5, it means something. Like it goes towards something. Like it's, you know.
And to that end, Jesse, to that end, it's an interesting number I heard the other day. A lot of organizations, charitable organizations, use money for different things. For PanCan, 85% of the money contributed goes to the programs we've been talking about. 15% is administrative costs, but 85%, which is a huge number, they're dedicated to patients and doctors and finding a cure for this disease.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Yes. Like I said, fan of DS9 now. Love it. Have my, favorite characters. Like I said, my husband is a fan of yours, Armin. So happy to be able to talk with you guys today. But like they said, on April 26th, that is the march. If you check out the website. You can find to see if you're near a city nearby. But yeah, if you just want to donate, just hit that QR code. It takes you straight to the Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer team. Okay.
Or you can type in www.purplestride.org/Team Trek.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't forget, you can listen to all the audio versions of Crusher Convo on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can support the podcast by buying merch on TeePublic, buy me a coffee by scanning that QR code, or becoming a Patreon member for as low as $3 a month. But the best way to support Crusher Convo is to like and subscribe here on YouTube. You can also find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, or TikTok, so please follow me there. And of course, all this information can be found on crusherconvo.com.
Crusher out.